Hello everyone, Benjamin Lindsay here, Senior Editor at Backstage, and we are joined today by JoeMazzello.
Hello.
Thanks for coming by.
Absolutely, thank you for having me.
Yeah. You have a big week ahead of you, the November 2nd opening of Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yes.
I feel like everyone's talking about this movie.
Yeah, sounds like it, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's amazing to see how many billboards. It's on cabs.
Mm-hmm.
It's on buses. It's definitely finding its way into the culture. I think. This film. Yeah, it's pretty wild. It's a pretty big opening.
Yeah, certainly.
You can feel it.
You play John Deacon, the famed bass guitarist of Queen. How is it that this role first came about for you?
Yeah, it first came about, I happened to be in London when I found out Rami was attached to play Freddie Mercury, and I worked with Rami 10 years ago on The Pacific, HBO miniseries. I was like, oh, that's awesome. I was with my manager, and he was like, the producers are in town. We should go see them and tell them to put you in the movie. And I was like, okay, yeah, Eric,
That's how it works, right?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, okay, Eric. But Eric is a very, aggressive manager in that way. And so I was like, okay, fine. So I go there and meet one of the producers, and my manager, again, is just like, you should put him in your movie. I'm just like, oh my goodness, please don't embarrass me. And he's like, oh, do you play guitar? And I was like, not as good as Queen. And he just sort of sat down like, okay. And I was like, okay, well, this is never happening. But what was so weird about it is that about 3 weeks later, I got a call from my manager saying, hey, guess what? They're interested in you for the Queen film.
All right.
Apparently you look a lot like John Deacon, the bassist. So I did a little Google search, and I immediately called my mother. And I said, Mom, where were you in 1983? Did you take a vacation to London? Because this man could be my father. He looks exactly like
It's not the milkman.
It's John Deacon on tour. There was a resemblance immediately. And so I said, oh man, I actually probably have a shot at this.
Yeah.
And so I immediately got a bass guitar from a friend of mine because I wanted to learn the songs. I had a little background in guitar, but I'd never actually touched a bass in my life. So I wanted to learn a couple of the songs. I figured that would be the audition, right? They want to hear me play. So I learned Another One Bites the Dust. They end up not asking me to play. All they want to hear is my English accent.
Okay.
And so they sent me this little 2-minute interview that John Deacon did on this bus, kind of driving around, and said, just take a minute of this and send it back to us like you do in The Voice. So that day I actually went, I was in Long Island, and I just started driving around, doing something that I don't recommend at home, but taking a selfie video and driving and sort of matching the light like it was in the bus, and just talking to the camera and answering some of the questions from the interview in the camera.
Okay.
And I just said, this is actually pretty good. And I sent it along, and that was that.
And then that sealed the deal.
And they were like, we don't need anything else, thank you.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. But it still took another month and a half for me to get the role.
Right.
They were just like, don't worry, just wait. And it was very funny because when I found out I got the role, Brian and Roger were playing with Adam Lambert, Queen with Adam Lambert, in Brooklyn.
Okay.
And I was like, should I just go there and hold up a sign and just put me in your movie?
Right.
So I really wanted to do that, but then that day I found out I got the job, so it was sort of fated. It was
so change the sign to say, I'm in your movie.
Yeah, exactly, bring me on stage.
Not bad. You mentioned the uncanny physical resemblance, and that's something that I've noticed across the board for the actors playing this thing. That must have just been really cool to kind of be part of this this reincarnated version of Queen on set and whatnot. I mean, Rami Malek obviously looks just like Freddie Mercury.
Yeah, especially when he puts the teeth in. They gave him a little nose prosthetic that really, it was a subtle thing that suddenly you just went, oh my goodness, he is Freddie Mercury.
Yeah.
And the mustache, it was really, the transformations were amazing. Gwill, he plays Brian May, and you look at him, he doesn't look anything like Brian May to me. And when you put the wig on, and he just does the sort of Brian May face, sort of side eye, it was just
it works.
I literally said I was audible when I first saw him in it. We were watching the camera test, and I just was wow, because I just couldn't believe what I was seeing.
Yeah.
How close we could get to these guys,
Yeah.
and we just knew then that it was oh, this could actually be pretty special if we get this right.
Yeah. Now this film, of course, kind of charts the Queen on and off the stage, but I do want to hear a bit more about the experience filming those live scenes. Technically, what did that look like? What was it like for you as an actor doing that? Just what was the whole experience like?
Greatest thrill of my life. Right, that's why you become an actor, to like live out these other dreams that you couldn't reach. So you get to pretend that you did these things. And for me, I mean, what is cooler than to be a rock star? Not just any rock star, but one from like the biggest band of all time. So it was one of those no-brainer jobs where you're just like, this is going to be great. But they did throw us a little curveball and said that we were going to do Live Aid first. Day 1 through day 8.
And I remember that footage too, when that came out, behind the scenes.
Yeah, and so we had to, and they wanted it to be exact, because it's such a famous concert. They wanted us to go beat for beat. So it was like literally like there's a point where John just kind of like takes his hand off his bass and just goes like that. I didn't know to do that at that exact moment.
Wow.
You know, when he turns his head to his left and kind of goes up, I had to know all of those things. And I was doing actual like 8 counts, like I was a dancer. Like, to know like the steps and when he turns around and when he does everything. And so we had to rehearse it that much detail.
Yeah.
So they gave us 5 weeks to do it, which we could have taken longer actually. But it was it's a funny thing because I'm glad we did Live Aid first because it really like forged us together as a band. We became really close almost instantly, the 4 of us. And we just had such a good time together, and we really knew we kept raising each other's game because we all saw how important this was and how much we wanted to get it right. But at the same time, I also wish that we could have done it again at the end of the shoot because we became so much better at playing.
Right.
You know, and so like, and it became so much more natural. Like to be playing it and to be doing the choreography, your mind had to be thinking about a lot of things at once. And to have been a little bit more second nature on the instrument at the end would have been really awesome.
Right. That's the kind of thing only you notice.
I know, it's true. Like I'll watch this and be like, your fingers are coming off too much, you know, things like that.
Yeah.
But I had a real out-of-body experience though at one point. It was really emotional for me.
Yeah.
On the last day, we got to perform the entire set from start to finish.
Wow. Okay.
The entire 20 minutes, 3 cameras on cranes. We were all backstage, like touching in, like ready to go on stage, and we did it. And there were about 1,000 extras
and no
out
cuts,
there. No cuts. We just had to run the whole thing, start to finish. And Radio Gaga's the second song on that set. And I just remember going up to the microphone and like looking out on everyone, just like doing the Radio Gaga moves and like losing myself. Like I hate to say it, but it was like I became just Joe again for a minute. I was like, this is such a privilege. Like I am so lucky to be here and to be a part of this and be doing this. It's just like I was really moved by it for a moment, and then I'd be like, no, snap out of it. You gotta get back into character. You gotta move. You gotta get to the drums, you know. And I had to get back into it quickly, but I was almost like glad that I just sort of took that moment to like sit and appreciate like the kind of things that I'm able to do because I'm an actor and the career I've had. It's really a blessing. Yeah,
and if nothing else, it also kind of helps you get into the psyche of the experience of a rock star.
Yeah,
in a way.
Like 100,000 people. Yeah. This massive moment. Yeah.
Now, aside from the actual moment, the live moments where you have that side-by-side comparison, you have the Live Aid, and you can practice the beats, practice the movements. What was your process like to really tap into John otherwise? What was your research? What did that look like?
I was thinking about it today. I was trying to put like a number on it. I think that this job was, I want to say, 4 times more difficult in terms of preparation than almost any other job I've done, with maybe the exception of the Pacific. But it's just like, okay, so I have to do all these things, right? I have to know how to hold my face like John, right? And kind of do the squint and kind of get my lip out there and so that I like look like him. And then I have to know how he moves on stage. So I went to YouTube, which just has a treasure trove of information. You can actually like follow the John Deacon camera for some of their famous concerts. Like 3 hours, the camera does not move off of John. Because typically when you watch them, it's Freddie, because he's the front man and he's the showman. And you just get pieces of some of these other guys. You can actually find this camera where you only watch John. So I got to see how he performed every song. And so I was like, okay, now I've got that down. I can sort of get those steps. Oh, I have to learn how to play the bass. I got to learn how to play about 30 Queen songs. Okay, so let me really do that. Okay, now I have this dialect. It's an East Midlands English accent that I'd never heard before, and need to feel comfortable enough not just to say my lines, but to ad-lib while doing that. Okay, so now I gotta do that. Now I gotta also learn not just how to play the bass, but how to play it like John Deacon did. And I haven't even gotten to acting yet.
Right, the list goes on.
Yeah, like, I haven't even gotten to the main point, which is to embody him, like, to give life to, like, who he actually was as a person. You know, in his private moments. And so, like, I had to do all that homework all that research, talked to everyone I could, talk to Brian and Roger. I never got to talk to John, unfortunately. You know, he's a very private man.
Yes,
he supports the film, though. I don't want it to come off as that he doesn't. He wrote Graham King, the producer, an email on the day one, just saying congratulations, and, you know, I wish you the absolute best. And so he's just a very private guy, and he was very affected by Freddie's death. And after that, he just said, you know, I'm going to leave Queen right there. And he never sort of wanted to go back to it. But Brian May was amazing. He was on set. He could have been sort of selfish if he wanted to, and just be like, I'm going to focus on Quill and just make sure that Brian May looks great. Just never like that. He always would come up to me. He always wanted to be a resource for me and for Rami and for everyone, and just give us all of his support and love anytime we needed it. And so to have him there to give me like small little details about stuff, like John used to lick his fingers while playing the bass because the strings would get stuck. So he's like, you should lick your fingers when you do some of these songs when you have breaks, because the fans will really dig that, because like that was a detail that I didn't see. I was like, oh man, he does that all the time. And so things like that, like he could really give me. And then you watch interviews as much as you can, but interviews only give you so much because, you know, John tried to put himself in a certain light in interviews, and I mean, everyone does that, right? And so you didn't see like those really authentic personal moments, but there was some interesting things where you would watch interviews and you would see at the end of it, John, they would keep the cameras rolling, and he would be so happy. He'd be like, oh, good, it's over. Like, and you could tell, oh, he's got this like anxiety a little bit. Like that. And,
so play with that.
Yeah, and even with him wanting to be so private now, that's even something I used. You know what I mean? Like, what's that psyche? Why he wouldn't want to be a part of this anymore and want to remove himself, and the way he felt about Freddie. I used all of that. Even in his absence, you kind of get something. So, man, I just did everything I could. Like, literally any resource I had, I went to it. Yeah.
Well, that kind of leads into my next question then. I had mentioned before the cameras were rolling that Backstage we are for that early career working actor. What advice do you have for the actors out there if they're tasked with playing a real life figure?
Well, you know, understand, I think, that it's an immense responsibility, and that you're going to feel that. You're going to feel that. It's and rather than being overwhelmed by that, use it to focus yourself. Use it to if you're having a bad day on set or you're tired or whatever it is, just, you know, there's that extra gear. You're responsible to the person you're playing. You're responsible to their family. In this case, I'm responsible to the Queen fandom. You know, millions and millions of people all over the world who love this band. You feel their passion for this, and you say, I want to get it right for them. And just to make sure that you use that as a source of motivation rather than something that sort of terrifies you, and because it can go either direction. And then just do as much homework as possible. But when you get on that stage and when you got to do it, you got to let it all go. You just got to, whatever you're nervous about, you're worried, is this going to work? You just have to literally just say it's showtime and go for it. And whatever happens, happens, right? Like, there's always that moment. And when you can get to that, it's a sense of relief in a way, because you know you've done everything you could possibly do to prepare for that moment, and now it's just going out there and living it. Yeah,
I love that. I feel like the prep work, that's what's rooted in the kind of, you can get caught up in the fact that you're portraying a real person, but once you're on set or once you're on stage, it's just about the material and the work.
And about connecting to the people around you and finding something true and real in those moments.
Now, you've been acting for quite some time, not to state the obvious.
Yeah, I must be insane. 30 years.
30 years.
30 years.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Age 5, right?
Age 5.
Yeah. So it goes a little ways back.
Yes.
To say the least.
Yeah.
What was it that first got you into acting?
Oh, well, you know, my show business was sort of in our family.
Yeah.
My dad was a dancer. He danced on Broadway. My mom was a dancer. She was better than my dad, actually, but she never made it to Broadway, unfortunately. But, you know, she danced all the time. And so they ended up opening a dance studio together in upstate New York in Poughkeepsie. And I have an older sister, and she used to watch all the dances. They had like a performing company. They would go around the town, and, you know, and she would memorize all that stuff. And I don't remember this, but I was told this. We would go down to Atlantic City, and she'd be on the boardwalk, and she would just start performing for people, and people would crowd around her. And my parents said, you know what, maybe we should get her into some commercials, like get her a manager and just put away some money for college, just to give her a little leg up in life, because they grew up pretty poor, especially my dad. So they got her into it. Well, she would bring home cookie commercial sides and things like that, and then I would start memorizing her. And then I'd start mimicking her, and I would do it. And so then my parents were like, well, maybe, all right, maybe we should get Joe and do it too, and see what happens. And it just really took off. It took off for my sister, too. She did so many commercials. She paid for her college education just doing commercials. Wow. Retired at age 12. Ended up going to Harvard Law, so she's just fine.
Right.
And I just stuck with acting. I just loved it. Every day I loved it, and it just really took off like a rocket from there.
And then as time went on, you eventually went to USC for film and TV production. You just had your directorial feature debut 2 years ago, Undrafted.
Yeah.
What's your experience behind the camera and that deep education at USC? How has that informed something like what you're doing now with Bohemian Rhapsody?
Yeah, wow. You know what's funny? Like, the best education I got was movie sets. I mean, my first really big movie was with Dick Donner. Okay, the guy who did Superman and The Omen and Goonies and the list goes on. And so it's like, to start there and to feel the joy that he had and the love that his crew had for him, because he was just such a good, jovial, fun person, that set me off on a trajectory where it's just like, I want to do that. I want to do what that guy does. Then I worked with this guy called Steven Spielberg, who was Dick Donner's one of his best friends. Yeah. And in him, I saw someone who so deeply connected to his actors, especially children. Someone who had the attention for detail like I've never seen before. You know what I mean? He knew every small thing. If a soda cup was like here or 3 inches to the right, and also knew the entire arc of every character, right? Like he had everything in his mind. And he could do every job on set if he needed to. And to see that kind of dedication, there was a hurricane during Jurassic Park. And he went and said, oh, let's go film the hurricane as it approaches, because maybe we can use it for the film. That mindset, I just think is the most incredible thing ever. And so that was really the education I received, you know, and then I got to work with Richard Attenborough, who was an actor, director, David Fincher. Like, I've gotten to work on amazing films with such incredible directors, and I've tried to take a piece of everything that I felt was so valuable that they did, or something that they brought for me as an actor that I said, wow, that was really helpful. Or watch the way they commanded the set, or watch the way that the vibe of the set, it all comes from the top, you know? And I sort of used all that. How that connects to Bohemian Rhapsody is, it's odd, because, you know, I made my film, I acted in my film, and I did try to keep the set very light. I like a very relaxed environment. That's how I always feel like I do my best work. When I'm laughing, I'm joking around, I'm keeping things very loose, and then when the cameras roll, I can just bring all of my energy and focus it into that moment and just get it done there and then release it again. And just be like, okay, get rid of it, and like, back to me. And, you know, every actor has their own process, but that's always been mine, and I try to carry that over to when I was a director. It's odd being on a movie after that where you're not the director, where you always are like on the verge of saying something. Like if you see a miscommunication happening between like the director and the DP, or the DP and the gaffer or something, and you've noticed it, I always just want to be like, excuse me, but there was one moment though where I did say something. We're doing Another One Bites the Dust. Dexter Fletcher was the director at this point. And they had to move lightning quick because we were behind.
Right.
And so in the Another One Bites the Dust scene, they were going to cover me just from like the side, like just this profile for like my main part of that scene, like the biggest line I have in that scene. And I was like, guys, are you sure about this? Because you did the reverse. You did the 3-shot of those guys looking at me from right here. Don't you need that right there again? And they're like, oh, no, we're going to do this off angle. We want to do that. Okay.
Yeah.
And I sort of like walked
Not
off.
necessarily what you would do.
I was like, okay. And Dexter was like, did you really want that? I was like, Dexter, I want to give you whatever you need. But I think that we're not doing that because you're rushing, not because it's not the right shot. If it's the right shot, we should do it. And 5 minutes later, I got a call, hey Joe, we're coming to set, we're doing your frontal close-up.
Yeah.
And what do you think's in the movie?
Yeah.
That shot.
Right.
And so sometimes that director instinct did help me out, or even like, you know, someone like Ben, you know, who is younger than me, and I have all this experience on movie sets, and he has some experience too, but not quite as much. He would come to me and ask things like, hey, what are they doing right now? Or like, what's going on? Or like, why is this taking, and I usually had some insight because I had that sort of director mindset, and so it was nice to sort of be there for him, or like to be there as a liaison sometimes to like kind of explain what's going on. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's great. So, and also kind of in line with the fact that you've had work both in front of and behind the camera, when it comes to auditions, that's just a natural part of the actorly experience.
The worst part, I would
argue.
argue.
Part, yeah. I'm sure that you're not alone in thinking that, certainly. But A, how do you typically prepare for an audition? And B, maybe casting your own film, how has that process changed since then?
Yeah, wow. And I shouldn't do this, but I know that depending on how much I really like the role is directly correlated to how much I prepare for it. I always try to prepare. I always want to be off book. I hate not being off book. I hate walking into an audition room feeling like I have no idea what's coming in this next line and I'm going to have to be in that page. Sometimes you have to do that because auditions come at you rapid fire and you're just like, okay, well I just got to find my moments where I can be off book and then be on book but keep it flowing and keep it natural. Keep that rhythm. But I typically like to have a good 3 days because the lines sort of seep in overnight for me, and that's when I sort of can get really comfortable with it, and the more comfortable I feel with the lines, the more I'm sort of ready to rock and roll on the day. But, you know, I don't write any, you know, I never took any acting classes, so I don't write any notes on the page. I don't go to a coach like to help me with it. It really comes from somewhere inside of me, just from the heart, right? Like I'm a heart first actor, and I read it and I feel like I have a skill at empathizing with who I'm playing or what the person's going through, and I just try to take that emotion in and feel those things, and see how I respond to that, and you know that will kind of dictate how I'm going to say the lines or what have you. And then I can get, I also have like anal retentive sort of side to me as well. So things I really want to prepare for, there's definitely lines where I'm like, I really like the way I say that and I want to make sure I hit that and just sort of keep those things in my mind as I'm going through it while still trying to sort of be free. But it's a very odd thing to do because a lot of times you're reading to somebody who is maybe giving you nothing, right, back. So you have to sort of act off of something that's sort of this, or sometimes it's like a very like sort of over sort of acting that you're getting back, and that's interesting too because like your instinct is always to react to what is happening to you when you're an actor, reacting like to what the other actor's doing and finding like the energy between you guys to make it work. If you guys are doing scenes differently, it's not going to work. It's going to look stupid. But in audition, you sort of have to not be influenced by the reader. You have to sort of know the way that you feel it should be done and stick with that. And that's a sort of odd thing. When I was able to, do my own castings, I just wanted to be as friendly as possible. Yeah. Because auditions are intimidating. I still get nervous on auditions, you know? They can still be like, you know, especially like network auditions, 20 people in a room, no one's saying anything, it's dark, you're sort of raised on a stage. It's brutal. Hate it. So I just want to try to make it as comfortable as possible. When I did the Pacific auditions, Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks were in the room for the last two. And Tom and Steven made me feel so comfortable. They joked, they tried to like make the atmosphere feel like it's a team rather than a judgment. And I wanted to make sure I did that for my film, that I joked around with the actors, that I gave them an opportunity to do it again if they felt like it wasn't quite right, to just try to do everything I could to make them feel like we were discovering this together rather than me being like Caesar and giving a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Right.
And a lot of the time I'm sure that it can feel that way. It can feel like Caesar on the other side of the table.
Absolutely. And you feel, and it's hard not to get like jaded or feel like some sort of like, man, like I've been doing this for 30 years and you know, who's this guy? His dad has money and now he's directing a movie and he doesn't know what he's doing and it's just like, and I'm like, they're like, dance monkey, like for them, and it's just like, you know, but
you're doing something right though.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, you just gotta keep plugging. You know what I mean, you gotta believe in the work. You gotta believe in what you do, and if you love a script, you gotta just give everything you got.
Yeah, certainly. Well, as a final question that I'll leave you and leave leave our audience with today. You have been doing this for 30 years. What is one piece of advice that you'd give your younger self when you were first getting started here?
Oh my goodness. Don't turn down a TV show when you're a sophomore in high school because a girl wants you to go to the prom with her. How about that advice? I would give that advice. It was funny, like, my parents always kept me very grounded, and I so appreciate that. My dad used to always say to me after every film, like, Joe, this could be your last movie. You gotta be okay with that, right? He never wanted it to be that I lived for it, and that, like, without it I would have no identity, or I'd fall apart, or, like, just go off the rails. And, sometimes that worked too well, because then it was like, meh, like, I ended up, like, not caring about some things that I wish I had, and so maybe just, in those sort of formative years to realize that this was the thing that I really did love and always wanted to do with my life, and make sure that I kept that as my top priority sometimes. Yeah.
And follow your heart from the beginning, maybe.
Yeah.
Not bad. Well, Joe, it's been great getting to know you a little bit. Thanks for coming by. And congratulations on the film.
Yeah,
out this Friday. Everyone go see it, Bohemian Rhapsody. We will see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.